Hello everyone, my name is Jean Villedieu and welcome to today's webinar, Anti-Money Laundering, combining graph analytics and AI to improve efficiency. So today we are going to have a bit of a different format. So we are doing this webinar in partnership with Dataiku. So let's get started. So I'm pleased to introduce John McCambridge. John, over to you.
Thank you. Hi there. So I'm the Global Solutions Director for Financial Services at Dataiku. We work very closely with the team at Linkurious. As you'll see, this presentation will be about how the partnership of Dataiku and Linkurious is fantastic for being able to really achieve the complete end-to-end success within the AML space, with a particular focus on the entire experience and life cycle of graph analytics. So I'll pass back to Jean to move us forward, and then you'll hear from me a little later on.
Thank you very much, John. So my name is John, and I'm the Managing Director at Linkurious, and I will be presenting today how Linkurious and Dataiku help financial institutions fight back against financial crime. So first, a quick word of introduction about Linkurious. For those not familiar with the company, it was created in 2013. We have two offices, one in France, one in the US. We are a team of 50 plus employees, and we are serving ballpark 4,000 analysts throughout the world who are all using Linkurious Enterprise to fight back against financial crime. We have a few strategic partners, such as Neo4j, one of the leading graph database vendors, but we also have partnerships with Microsoft, Deloitte, PwC, Capgemini, and that's very much topical, Dataiku. We have 100 plus clients throughout the world. We are working with some government institutions, such as East Revenues and Customs Services, the UK Tax Agency. We're also working with financial institutions such as Zurich Insurance, which is one of the leading insurance companies in the world, and other companies such as Pioneer, Airbus, Street, or RIA Money Transfer. So that's it for a quick intro to Linkurious. And now let's learn more about Dataiku.
Absolutely. So Dataiku is a product across the data analytics and machine learning space. We in particular have a very strong presence in financial services, but as you can see, we have relationships across many different industries, and we have some fantastic partnerships, many of which are overlapping with the ones that Linkurious outlined, and of course Linkurious themselves are a key partner of ours. In particular, in my space, we focus on financial services, as noted. We have over 140 clients in the space, including 45 of the world's largest financial institutions. And these clients leverage us for a vast array of different use cases and as well as strategic goals. And one of the most important things that we offer is collaboration across systems. We'll talk a little bit about what Dataiku can provide, but you'll see later on in a dedicated demo how we are actually supporting, working with critical partners who provide key solutions like Linkurious to actually build a complete way of solving particular challenges. Dataiku's offer is a complete data platform for analysis, machine learning, and beyond. We basically allow you to take whatever data that you have and then work it through a series of well-governed data projects and completely under your own control from start to finish. And that includes being able to connect to vital services that allow you to succeed in that analysis by providing critical and powerful capabilities, such as Linkurious for graph analytics. The key offer for Dataiku is to ensure that you don't have to settle by choosing between key strategic goals, like, for example, being about low or no code, or instead being a full code suite, or choosing between things like cloud or access or governance, or in particular, the ability to be self-service and responsive versus being very locked down but robust. We offer you a place in which you can be all of these things simultaneously. The way we do this is by offering you a complete space in which to work from any type of persona, any type of business or functional user. and by offering them a space to do data prep, exploration, visualization, as well as analytics of anywhere from basic statistics all the way up to full machine learning and AI, and then to overlap all of that with an operations and governance platform. And all of this, again, can be done with things like visual recipes or full code, and can be connected to any set of data structures, including, of course, graph databases. So I'll pass back to Jean to talk about the space of anti-money laundering, and then we'll return to talk about where Dataiku can help you connect all of these pieces together into a successful deployment.
So for today's session, we are going to follow the following agenda. We'll start with discussing some of the changes in anti-money laundering and CTF. Then we'll talk about how Linkurious and Dataiku can help. Then we'll discuss more efficient AML with Linkurious and Dataiku. We will actually explain what's the joint solution that we are providing to the market. Then we'll dive into an interesting topic, which is enhancing an existing anti-financial crime setup. We are seeing a lot of clients that are starting with legacy systems, and we'll discuss how we can help improve those legacy systems. And then afterward, we'll dive into a demo to actually show in practice the joint solution of Linkurious plus Dataiku. So let's get started. Let's talk about striving for more efficient anti-money laundering. So first, anti-money laundering is a regulatory obligation, and that's something that's high on the agenda of all financial institutions. And there are three big drivers that are pushing those institutions to review and improve their approaches. First, there are the limitations of current classic rule-based approaches, which are driving significant volumes of false positives. Secondly, there's the cost of maintenance of manual workarounds. And finally, there's the increase in scrutiny from regulators, resulting in a number of fines, and all of that are acted as incentives for improved controls. And there are really a lot of changes for financial institutions that are facing this situation. First, the topic of anti-money laundering is complex. The funders, the money launderers out there demonstrate constant innovation with multiple patterns and signals to track, and financial institutions have to find the right approaches to balance between identifying all offenders in a timely manner, but just the offenders and not clients. They also have to balance with finding an efficient setup and not have something that's too costly. And they also have to balance with regulatory compliance, client management, and cost management. So that's a lot of things to get right in order to have an effective anti-money laundering approach. And to do that, most financial institutions leverage market tools to tackle anti-money laundering. And with these tools, they are facing multiple challenges. First, there's the aspect of low customization of those market tools, those legacy tools, and their limited timely ability to evolve and integrate new capabilities. Secondly, there's the traditional pass-fail types of controls that are still very much prevalent and that are triggering significant volumes of false positives. And at the same time are missing advanced schemes from smart money launderers. There's also the inability to use complex models in real-time decisioning or transactional flows, the issues with client satisfaction risks in case of inadequate reporting, and finally, the lack of backtesting environments. All of these are big changes for financial institutions that are relying on legacy anti-money laundering tools to improve their anti-money laundering practices. So now let's talk a little bit about how Linkurious and Dataiku can help. First, we provide an integrated approach between graph and machine learning capabilities that are rolled into a single solution that can work both for the investigators, the folks conducting the actual investigation of suspicious cases, but also the data scientists on whom they are relying. And with this joint solution, financial institutions can significantly improve their efficiency on AML by completing traditional systems with the ability to leverage both graph analytics and machine learning to generate more relevant alerts in order to reinforce the existing systems, not replace, but add to those systems. And secondly, progressively and gradually replace them when it makes sense. We also provide graph visualization capabilities that are very much very important to accelerate and improve the quality of investigations. And finally, that solution creates an efficient agile backtesting environment, which enables all of our clients to define appropriate indicators and scoring approaches. So this is really what our joint solution brings to the market. And now we are going to dive deeper into the specific of this solution, and I'm going to pass the baton over to you, John.
Absolutely. So as was just outlined there, the support that Dataiku is offering here is one of modularity and interconnectivity. It's not about replacing one black box with yet another black box, and it's not about ripping out an entire existing system and then trying to start from scratch. Instead, it's about taking wherever your current placement is. Maybe you have one big existing system that you want to enhance or improve. Maybe you have a series of interconnected systems that are struggling, or maybe you have a existing setup that is viable, but that there are key pieces that are not available to you. Regardless of what that arrangement is, you want to take a modular, gradual approach to improvement. And this is where a combination of Dataiku and Linkurious can be so powerful. So for example, you might want to be enhancing elements on the KYC side. You might want to be working on monitoring or the generation of alerts. You might add an entirely new functionality you might not yet have, like the tiering of your alerts, so the ranking of them by probability they will ultimately be escalated. And then, of course, your investigation elements. In each of these places, you're going to perhaps have an existing way of doing something, or you might have no way of doing that particular thing, and you'll want to be enhancing and adding in over time. This approach that we'll outline allows you to take your own pace and to do things in a steady manner. So for example, if we look at all of the different components in a kind of stylized approach, you can see that there are many different players involved and many different steps. Along the entirety of this element, you can have Dataiku as a centralized space for people to be clearing data through, to be adding in new functionality. And of course, critically, you will have graph databases and Linkurious at vital points along the way. Another way to think of this is that, as is indicated here, you will have your key personas, some of the key people who will be engaged at the front line, like your KYC officers, your compliance officers, or your investigators. But those will often, ideally, be supported by knowledgeable data scientists or data analysts. In many current systems, that can be quite difficult to achieve. But with Dataiku, it's very natural for these people to be collaborating directly with each other. And I'll show you a very concrete example of that when we get to the demonstration, in which I'll show you Dataiku and Linkurious working well together via a shared Neo4j database. And you will see how readily for example, data scientist with ML skill, machine learning skill, could work right alongside a compliance team or investigator to improve their processes without the need to create some kind of entirely dedicated new team or new product. As was noted, we're really talking here about this enhancement to an existing setup. So Dataiku with Linkurious could offer you the entire sweep of your needs in this space. But in reality, you likely have pieces that you will want to be enhancing or replacing slowly. And what you really want is to gain new value or to retrofit elements that are currently giving you significant troubles. This also is a great opportunity for you to sandbox and experiment with entirely new approaches. All of this, by the way, is extremely well governed and auditable. As was noted, Dataiku is used extensively in the financial services industry. One of the reasons for that is that it is an entirely on-prem or private cloud service, so it entirely runs on your own systems, and it has very strict governance and controls around it. Even if you're working in a sandbox environment, for example, within Dataiku, everything that you do is allocated against and only permitted by the controls around your login, and everything is recorded and audited that you undertake there. So in this case, we're going to talk about the idea of embodying your existing processes, alerts, and models and enhancing them. So you will have various different stakeholders who might currently be shut out of the process or might be isolated from each other at the moment. In particular, your data engineers and scientists might be isolated or not available to you at the moment relative to your investigation and compliance officers. And then indeed, in many teams, we see that IT and technology is yet another kind of independent group that are providing some fundamental foundational elements, but are not really participating alongside the key teams. This kind of bifurcation is one of the elements of collaboration that Dataiku is very much intended to help solve. It is a solution that can be worked in, understood, and felt used with confidence by all of these different types of people. Here's a stylized example, and I'll ask Jean as well to comment on what you're seeing here. With Dataiku, you can imagine it being this clearinghouse space in which a lot of work can be done, while specialized, dedicated elements that you might want to preserve or add on as critical enhancements can be kept in their dedicated elements. So for example, here, you can see KYC, transaction, and many other data sets, including perhaps maybe document and unstructured data, can all be brought into Dataiku to perform powerful analyses. Perhaps you're going to also draw in some data from a management system that already exists in order to, say, enrich those. That could then be handed off to a case management system, which you might have set up and might be happy with. So perhaps you have a strong case management system that you like, but the problem is that the underlying data just isn't enriched enough to be powerful, and you lack any, say, graph analytics capabilities. Well, here you can see that Dataiku can ensure that all of these systems are talking to each other sensibly, that key analytics elements can be enriched, and then most vitally, your interaction with a graph analytics setup can be kept very straightforward while powerful. So you'll see here that you have Linkurious available to ensure that your interaction with that graph database and your discovery and analysis within it is of the highest caliber, while you can use Dataiku to manage the underlying database itself and ensure that it has the information and is well managed so that ultimately your, say, case management can succeed. I'll hand over to Jean for a moment here. Is there anything you'd like to weigh in particular on, say, Linkurious's place in this interaction?
No, just to reiterate that we are seeing clients using Linkurious and Dataiku to really enrich this sort of existing setup where they have transaction monitoring system, maybe a case management system, and with the joint solution, they can add on top of that machine learning and graph analytics capabilities, which can really help get more results out of their existing setup. So it's all about being agile, and that's something that we can deliver.
Absolutely. In particular, I'll draw your eye there. We've noted on a number of occasions here this Neo4j connection. Neo4j is a very powerful and impactful graph analytics database, but it can be difficult for folks who do not have a lot of deep training with it to feel comfortable interacting directly with the database. Dataiku allows you to interact directly with that database in a very elegant and comprehensible way, which I'll show you shortly, which is a great boon for teams that know that they can get great value from graph analytics, but are perhaps struggling with, say, the management of the underlying data structures or the automation of those data pipelines, which can sometimes feel out of reach. So Dataiku itself, as we already mentioned, is designed to handle a wide array of data types and scales, as well as to help you push compute to where it needs to go. In terms of connectors, you should feel well catered for. Basically, if you can get access to the data, Dataiku can get access to the data, and all of that can be well contained and controlled. We also, of course, have a lot of very powerful, what we call visual recipes, which are great ways to do things that other teams might have had to, in the past, resort to code in, say, Python to achieve. You can still code directly inside of Dataiku, and that work will still be well governed if you like. But much of the work that you might resort to, say, a Python library to achieve can be very easily achieved entirely with visual components inside of Dataiku, which makes it great for not just data scientists, but also for, say, officers who are working at the front line who know what they want to do, they just wouldn't know how to write it out in code. And of course, as noted, it has excellent interaction with Neo4j, which of course, as does Linkurious, which allows the two to share a common database space very effectively and to pass read-write information back and forth readily. We'll also show you the integration of a machine learning model into this space. So Dataiku, for example, is able to assist you in the generation of AML rules. So you'll see two examples of that. One will be that we will have some business rules, traditional business rules like you would likely have to hand already, alongside a machine learning rule so that you can maybe learn new insights or supplement your existing process. This, of course, is separated from and does not replace the business rules. It is something that you can test alongside. Whether or not you ultimately decide to use machine learning for your detection will, of course, rely on your regulatory environment and so on. You'll also see alert tiering using machine learning, which is a great example of a modular addition, whereby you might not, for example, use machine learning solely to detect the AML signals, but you might want to rank the results, the actual escalations that you, the alerts that you have, in order to help you guide your teams to know which ones are most likely to ultimately end up as alerts, as escalations, as SARs, so that you can then use that, for example, to refine your rules further, even if you decide to stick with a business rules approach. So let me load up the demonstration now. You'll see a live demo of Dataiku. I'll talk you through a little bit of the functionality there. We won't go into a huge amount of detail, though I'd be happy to answer more in the Q&A afterwards. And you'll see Dataiku, and then you'll see Linkurious, and joining them together is that shared Neo4j database. So if we turn over to my screen here, you'll be able to see Dataiku, which, as you can observe here, is running inside of a browser. So the way Dataiku works is that it isn't executed on your local machine. You simply access it through a browser. This, of course, means that it's very well centralized and controlled. But I will emphasize, this is not running on a public service. This runs on your internal setup and is completely secure to your own firm. So for example, if a specific bank installs Dataiku, they can install it on their private cloud or on their on-premise system. But most importantly, Dataiku does not have any access to it, nor does anyone else. Only the bank and the appropriate employees are allowed to access it. So it's a very secure and, in this sense, very much compatible with any traditional pre-cloud governance. And of course, we're also very compatible now with private cloud governance approaches. Dataiku itself, as I mentioned, is not a point solution. Instead, it offers a vast array of opportunities to run many different projects. You can see a huge number of them here. These are all individual projects which have been built by individual team members. Inside of a specific bank, for example, these would all be different projects that might be built by, say, your team. And you would see the ones that are relevant and appropriate to you. We have one, for example, that's dedicated to anti-money laundering. You can see that it's well scoped out here and includes a timeline, which will indicate every edit that ever happens in the past or in the future to come, which is great for audit purposes, as well as rollbacks. And then if we go into the heart of it, we can see what's called the flow, in which data and steps applied to that data flow from the left all the way through to the right, allowing you to see the fullness of the project as it is executed. We also have support for things like dashboards, things like scenarios and automation, and so on. Let me step you through a few of the components here, just to give you a high level. Again, to get a full experience of Dataiku, you can always reach out to us afterwards, and we'd be happy to connect you. I'll give you a few of the highlights, and then in particular, we'll emphasize these Neo4j connections, which you can see here at the far right. So the way Dataiku works is that you pull in your data, your various different data sets from your various different connections. These data sets could run on various different types. So maybe in one project, you're connecting to multiple different product processors, to a cloud setup that was recently created, and maybe a few other on-site databases. These can then be processed in various ways. So for example, here is a data set in which we are applying a simple join. Here you can see a description of the nature of the join, what columns have been kept. So this is a classic join recipe, which anyone can create without having to do any code. You can then apply various visual steps to it. So for example, here I am geolocating an IP based on a specific column, calculating latitude and longitude into a geopoint, splitting out things using a grep, and then removing a bunch of columns. As you can see, this is exactly the kind of data wrangling, data work that you might do that either as ETL or as kind of on, like right on your local machine data wrangling work. You can see that all of it is recorded here simply by taking the action. This is called inherent governance in Dataiku. So what it means is you don't have to tell anyone or write on a wiki or something like that what you've done. You simply take the steps you want, and then it will record that that is indeed what you have done. So if you want to, for example, increment a date, or you want to flag a specific time period, or if you want to, for example, count the occurrences of a word or extract a specific block of text, or many other of the 101 things that you can do here, filter things based on specific columns. Any of these steps that you add in will simply appear as another step. And therefore, by taking the action of removing these columns, I am recording simultaneously that that is what I have done. So anyone can go back in and look at this later without having to know what someone had done, or without having to read a big document that tries to describe it. They can just literally read exactly what the person did. So this is a great way to move away from these kind of people trying to draw a map about what's happening, and instead just directly introduce people to the territory itself so they know exactly what really is happening. This is great as well for diagnosing any challenges that occur. You can see that as we work, we're able to do all sorts of different things with the data. We can process them into smaller data elements. We can group them. We can split them. We can window them. We can do all sorts of great things. We can then, if we like, introduce, for example, code. So here we have 3 rules that we have declared and processed against the data, and we are using simple Python scripts to achieve them. So you might, for example, have an existing set of rules, maybe multiple rules that you have, which might already exist in another piece of code, or they might exist in Python already, or SQL, or anything like that. It would be very easy to bring that directly into Dataiku. It's very easy to work with SQL objects, as well as Python or R, as you can see here. We have many different capabilities. And as you see, these are all recorded as elements that can be governed and controlled. But additionally, you could also program these rules using things like visual recipes, right? And use them to declare specific formulas and so on, even formulas similar to how you would in Excel. So many different ways to approach it. And you can see in parallel to these business rules, we have a machine learning algorithm. Here, we're performing isolation forest for anomaly detection, and we're using this to supplement our existing work. And as you can see, this is a fully governed space for all of your machine learning work. So you were able to see all of the details about the nature of the algorithm used. You're able to perform data drift analysis. You're able to look at variable importance elements, and much more besides. All of these kind of insights are automatically generated. You don't have to manually generate any of them. Any of the past models that you build are always tracked. And this is fantastic for experimentation and governance. And as well, it's very easy to get these up and running. All you have to do is create a new machine learning object. You can just go right into the lab and do exactly that here. Try AutoML, deep learning, or much else besides. All of this can be done with somebody who's just getting started with machine learning if they want to experiment, or can be used by a fully trained data scientist who knows all of the details of what they're trying to do. Both are very much possible. It completely depends on what their preference is and how they want to work. We find that many teams will work inside of Dataiku to, say, design their particular isolation forest model as you can see, all of the parameters can be set here. This is, even if they could have designed it all in Python, for example, or R, they will do it here in Dataiku's visual component because it's just easier to control and saves them a bunch of typing that's ultimately tedious. You'll see, again, a separate machine learning algorithm here calculating the alert prioritization. So we are tiering the alerts that have been generated by the business rules and the machine learning model, which have been aggregated together here into a single file. Each of these is now being tracked, and then we are evaluating based on historical trend, which ones are likely to actually end up being escalated into a SAR. This is a great piece of enrichment that we can then pass into our Neo4j database. Show you one last element before we look at Neo4j, which is the dashboarding. Dataiku has dashboarding here that allows you to evaluate all sorts of things, including, for example, the performance of the different rules that you've set up. You can then look at the triaging of them in terms of how likely some of them are to ultimately be escalated. And then, of course, you can dig into the depths of how these have been designed so that you understand both the anomaly detection and the triaging model and how they work. So all of this is fully explainable. Again, there are no black boxes in Dataiku. So I'll go back now and show you the connections to Neo4j so you can see how straightforward it is to set these up. For those of you who have worked previously with graph databases, you can know that the insertion into the database can be one of the more challenging elements. It requires you to work through a lot of different data sets and to manage a lot of different concepts like nodes and edges. This is handled very nicely in Dataiku using these connectors. So you can set up your nodes for each specific element and all of their associated properties. And then you can set it to the appropriate server. And then you can go through each of your components, set them up to design your relationships, your nodes, your edges, and then use this as a way to adjust or enhance or tweak elements. If you, for example, introduce a new concept, a new feature or variable, you can easily just create a new connection between the new variable, the appropriate ID, and then the database by using a new Neo4j component here. And so it's very easy to understand, like, okay, here are my ATM transactions. I am connecting them as a node, and here's the manner in which I'm doing it. This is a great way to oversee the work that's being done. It's a great way to know what is and isn't being pushed through to Neo4j. And of course, it's a great way to know if something goes wrong and you look in your graph analysis and it looks all bonkers, and you're like, oh, well, I've obviously connected something incorrectly. It's very easy to then go back in here and evaluate, I see, I had meant for this to be a node, but instead I set it up as an edge or something like that. So this is a great way to figure out those problems and make sure that things are running well for you. So these are, of course, also read-write connections. So you're able to also evaluate information that's in the Neo4j database and pull it back out so you can understand what is ultimately happening there. So with that, you'll see that we've gotten up to the Neo4j element. You've seen dashboard visualizations and so on. You've seen that we have things like automation and scenarios. But what you would, of course, want to do now that you've been able to set up your Neo4j database is to see it in action. So I'll hand over to Jean, who can now show you how this same Neo4j database could be then accessed on the side of Linkurious, so that you now have this shared connective element between Dataiku and Linkurious through this Neo4j database underneath.
Thank you very much, John. So let's dive into Linkurious Enterprise now. So making that connection with the Dataiku environment is as easy as plugging Linkurious Enterprise to the Neo4j instance connected to Dataiku. Once Linkurious Enterprise is connected to that Neo4j instance, the data that will flow through Dataiku is also going to be able to be accessible via the Linkurious Enterprise interface. So there are new transactions that are being added to Dataiku. They will show up in Linkurious Enterprise afterwards. There are new scores that are being computed by the machine learning in Dataiku that will also be added to the Neo4j database and then to Linkurious Enterprise. So now let's dive into the specifics of the demo. So we've seen that we've used Dataiku and some machine learning models to compute risk scores for some transactions. Now, what I would like to show is how to leverage that within the Linkurious Enterprise environment. And in order to do that, we are going to be looking together at an alert. So we are going to click on the alerts dashboard. So here we can see a list of alerts, of cases really, that have been generated. But first, I want to look with you at how those cases have been generated. So we have here an ML-based alert. I'm going to click on Edit, and we are going to see how it works. So this alert has a name, okay, and it's really powered by query, which we can see here, and that query is very simple. It's looking at transactions between individuals. So here we have a person connected to a bank account, and this bank account has transferred money to another bank account that's controlled by another person. And what we are looking for is for transactions, symbolized by the R here, with a score above this 0.9 threshold. So really, we want to be notified when there's a transaction with a high risk score, and in the background, what's actually doing the heavy lifting is the machine learning model in Dataiku. This machine learning model is scoring the transactions, updating that score property, and then this score property is leveraged to generate cases. So that's a very simple way to turn the insights that are being generated within Dataiku into relevant and impactful cases and alerts in Linkurious Enterprise. So we have seen how to leverage the results from your ML models, and now we are going to look at the cases generated by this alert. So going back now to the dashboard and to the view that is accessible to a compliance analyst doing some triage work around those alerts. I can see a bunch of open cases, and I'm going to pick one of those. Okay. So let's look at this one, for example. We can see that it's unassigned and that it's open. So I'm going to go ahead and open the case. Linkurious Enterprise immediately gives me some context around that alert. I can see, not just the transaction, but some entities that are surrounding it. I can, add some comments here. I can, change the status of the case, assign it. But right now, I want to actually dive deeper into the data to conduct more thorough investigation. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Open in Workspace. Okay, so opening up in the workspace now. So I can see something interesting, which is that these two individuals that are involved in the suspicious transaction are connected to other entities. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on Gardenia Red, and immediately I can see something interesting, which is that there's a transaction that has been flagged as suspicious between Gardenia and Aline Royal. But these two persons are also sharing apparently an IP address. So maybe there's something going on here. I can expand the data further, retrieve other connections. I can see now that there are two other individuals that have been added to the screen. We have a River Wisdom showing an address with Gardenia Red, and a Mark Jordana showing a phone number with Gardenia Red. I can further expand the data, putting more information from different data sources. And we see, interestingly, even more entities being added to the mix. And now we have River Wisdom, Gardenia Red, we have a Mark Jordana, we have Aline Royal, and apparently all of these entities are interconnected. I'm going to dive even further into the data. So we have one other person. Zooming back a little bit now. So we can see that this starting point, the suspicious transaction, is already part of a larger and bigger picture. So it's not just two individuals that are involved in this suspicious transaction. We have a ring of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 persons that are apparently sharing personal information such as IP addresses, addresses, phone numbers, and more. So there's definitely something suspicious going on. That data that we can see in the graph, we can plot it on a screen to see where this is all happening, somewhere in the Chicago region, apparently. We can also slice and dice what we see on the screen. So maybe we just want to focus on the financial element of the network, of the graph. So I'm going to go ahead and open the filter panel, remove the addresses, remove the emails, the IP addresses, the loans, the persons, just to keep individuals and their bank accounts and the related transactions. If we want, we can be more fine-grained about the data. Maybe I just want to see the bank accounts that have received the most money. I can do this sort of analysis very quickly in a visual way. If I want, I can also simplify what I'm seeing on the screen, grouping the transactions, for example, to make it easier to understand what's going on. And I can also, bring the same data into a timeline to get a better feel for the dynamic aspect of what is going on. So, for example, I can quickly locate the first initial transaction. So this would be this transaction. I can play out the story. So after the initial transactions, these are the transactions that followed. Or I can look at everything at once, if that makes sense. So Linkurious Enterprise really allows me, when I'm switching into investigation mode, to understand the context around the suspicious entities and use that to make better, more informed decisions. Here in particular, I've quickly identified that suspicious transaction is indeed something suspicious because it's surrounded by a network of persons sharing personal information. So we are maybe looking at a ring of fake identities that are creating those fake identities to launder money. And Linkurious Enterprise really helps me, get an understanding of this sort of complex situation and then make the right choices. Once we have uncovered something of interest, we have different options to escalate and to share the insights that we have uncovered. We can export the result of the investigation as a visualization in a data format such as Excel, or in a picture format such as PNG or SVG. Maybe it's something that you want to add to your suspicious activity report, for example. It's also possible to save the visualization. That saved visualization can be shared with someone else. In a couple of clicks, I can add someone else and give him access to this shared visualization. And I can also publish it as a widget that can be, for example, embedded in a third-party application. So Linkurious Enterprise allows me not just to conduct the investigation, but also to communicate my findings to other team members. Going back to the dashboard now. So what we have seen is that with Dataiku, it's possible to really process the data, take different data sources, bring them into something coherent, and enrich that with machine learning driven insights, and then push everything to the graph, where within Linkurious Enterprise, you can both process alerts and conduct investigations. So that's really the sort of improvements, the sort of capabilities that the joint solution of Linkurious Enterprise and Dataiku can bring to you and your team. And that's it for today's demo. And we now have some time for the Q&A part of today's webinar.
All right, thank you both. I do see a few questions that have come through. If you haven't had time to submit your questions, feel free to do that now. The first question I see, can we trial both Linkurious Enterprise and Dataiku?
Sure. If you are interested in, one of those products or the two of them, you can contact us, contact Dataiku, and we will be happy to coordinate such evaluations.
All right. The next question here: do you have clients using Linkurious Enterprise and Dataiku together in production?
Yes, we do have joint clients. So we have clients in the government space, in the insurance space, that are using the two products in production today.
Great. Another question here. Do you have clients that are interested in graph analytics and machine learning, but want to progressively move in that direction? And then if so, what does this type of situation look like?
So it's, I would say that this is very much a common starting point for us. And John, by the way, feel free to also answer. Oftentimes, when we encounter new clients, they already have an existing setup. Sometimes it's a TMS. Sometimes they already have that data science platform that has been set up. And then we are bringing something new because they're frustrated or they're looking for that next level of efficiency, I guess. And with the joint solution of Dataiku and Linkurious, what's great is that it can be very, very progressive. As you've seen, it's easy to plug the two products together, and then you can really, be, let's say, strategic in terms of prioritizing what you want to tackle. Sometimes it's just adding visualization and investigation capabilities into an existing setup. Other times, it's the ability to add new data sources via Dataiku processing capabilities. That's the sort of the starting point of a project. There's a lot of freedom and flexibility here, I guess.
All right, thank you. Let's see.
Absolutely, Jean. I'd emphasize as well that that could also work well regarding questions around integration with other services. So as was discussed, if you have an existing service, Climate Ties or others, the key question is, are you looking to enhance those existing services or maybe modularize some components out? Regardless, it's very possible to do so. You can use Dataiku as a place to bring the various data elements into one space. And then, of course, interact that with Linkurious via graph analytics, like you just saw here. And then you can also add additional enhancements in via the Dataiku installation. If you'd like to get access, if you already have access to Linkurious but not Dataiku, or vice versa, you can always reach out either to the Linkurious or Dataiku rep that you're already working with, or you can reach out to myself and Jean, and we can direct you in the right direction. But it's a close partnership, so we can always make sure that you get the right person, especially if you're already using one of the products.
All right, thanks. Next question here. How complementary are graph analytics and machine learning at catching financial crime?
It's very complementary and in different ways. So there are things that graph analytics can do and that cannot be sort of replicated with machine learning. Advanced patterns in terms of connection. Think synthetic identities, money mule networks, that sort of things. Graph analytics is super efficient to catch that, and sometimes you cannot spot those with machine learning. So there's an extra boost that you can get out of graph analytics that you can't really get with machine learning. And in the same way, there are things with machine learning that you cannot do with graph analytics. Graph analytics, at the end of the day, you're dealing with business rules, and it's not as agile and as easy to evolve and to adapt as a statistical model. So also, separate benefits, I guess, for machine learning. And what's exciting is that you can combine both, because we are seeing clients that are using graph analytics as an input for their machine learning model, for example. So maybe a feature within your machine learning model is how many persons my client, how many fraudsters my client is connected to, and that can drive a lot of results, a lot of accuracy for your model. And in the same way, the results, the efficiency of machine learning can be enhanced by adding the graph visualization layer, I guess, on top of that, to help the business folks, the compliance analysts, make sense of what has been identified as suspicious by the machine.
Yes, so I would certainly agree there that both techniques are very effective together. And remember that enhancements that you gain through one can be fed into the other in order to get even greater insight. So they're excellent complements. Just like visual alongside statistical insight, it's a very powerful complement and very valuable. John, I think there's a question there about Cypher that might be worth you attacking.
Yep, so the next question about Cypher, it says, for Neo4j, we will need to Cypher to query graph database. Does this capability make this transition easier for SQL users?
It definitely does. With Dataiku, a lot of the data processing, a lot of the queries that are needed to generate the graph in the first place, that becomes, that can be done in a low code environment. So there's, a lot of, definitely makes it easier to get started.
All right. There's another question here. Can we integrate this service to Nice Actimize?
Yes, so as discussed earlier there, and John, if you want to layer in on the Linkurious side, but certainly from Dataiku's point of view, yes, it's very straightforward to integrate with other providers. And again, you can kind of decide the manner in which you want to undertake that integration. It can vary. But Jean, I'll let you talk about how that could work from your side. Sure.
I would just note that we have clients that are using Nice Actimize together with Linkurious Enterprise. So it's definitely a pattern that we have seen. So happy to talk more about that, and feel free to reach out.
All right. It looks like there's just a few more questions. So one of them are the Dataiku data pipelines production grade, efficiency, resiliency, or intended for working in sandbox/data science training environments?
That's an excellent question. So Dataiku is quite powerful in this regard, in that you can use Dataiku for both sandbox and for production work. In fact, Dataiku's architecture is designed so that you can have a development environment and a production environment version of Dataiku. And when you want to turn a project into a production set, you elevate from one instance to the other with the click of a button, and of course, sign off from a governance team. So the answer to the question is that they are very much both. The intention is for you to be able to work immediately in a sandbox space and get things experimented with and try things out, and then to very easily refine that inside of Dataiku into a production grade, efficient, resilient, and scalable architecture, all inside of Dataiku, and to then elevate that into production without ever having to refactor it. And many of our clients do precisely that. They deploy various projects, including high-scale, high-intensity, real-time data projects, using Dataiku itself is not only for the development, but also the production environment.
Thank you. One more question. How easy is it to implement Linkurious Enterprise and Dataiku?
So Jean, if you want to talk from your side.
Once once the data is available in Neo4j, and we have seen what it looks like to do that with the help of Dataiku, it's really trivial to set up and start using Linkurious Enterprise. We are available in the Azure Marketplace for fast deployment. You can also get access to builds that you can install within your own environments. And it's pretty much a matter of starting the application, connecting it to your graph database, and then you are off to the races. So very easy to get started.
Yes, and similarly for Dataiku, very easy to get started, especially if you want to try to experience it. You can use our public gallery to get a hands-on experience. And then, of course, we also have an online instance that you can use for experimentation. I imagine that teams who are interested in using this in their real environment, you simply need to speak with our team. You can connect through myself or reach out directly to our financial services team, and they can get you set up very quickly with a test environment and ensure that not only can you experiment just with the concepts, which you can do today right away online, but also that if you want to start using some of your own data, try out a POC and so on, they can speed that setup for you so that you can get up and running internally very quickly.
All right, so that's all the time we have for today, it looks like. So we want to thank you all for joining. And of course, if you do have any more questions or you would like to learn more, please don't hesitate to reach out to either us at Linkurious or Dataiku. So thanks again.
Thanks, everyone.
Oh.